Before Margot and Elida worked together to maintain Goldilocks in Mars' orbit and help Iasis 8, up from 7 after enlisting Rich, another of Miles and Massey's friends. Margot informs Elida that Werner von Braun thought progress was never free and that there was always a price. The M7's Goldilocks goal is, in theory, an endeavor for the benefit of all people, a form of progress. Unidentified technical developments. However, it appears that the M7 countries were actually ensnared in a case of FOMO and Mount Everest syndrome throughout the course of the last few episodes. While Goldilocks' resources are valuable, the importance of their limited supply cannot be overstated. Everyone is scrambling to come up with plans for iridium mining operations without having to consider the repercussions of those plans, since there is a limited window of opportunity to grab and exploit Goldilocks, and that window is closing faster by the second. Eli's enraged cry, "Don't these people understand? We're trying to change the world," when he finds out that the missing Happy Valley equipment has been taken in support of a planned asteroid robbery, isn't inaccurate, but it is also lacking. If the space agencies of the M7 nations trash their initiatives for Mars exploration in the course of changing the world, is that really a good thing? Ella's outrage that Iasis 8 are driven to line their goddamn pockets is ridiculous on its face. Of course, it's one of their objectives, just as it is a goal for those who are already extremely powerful and wealthy. Part of this season has been a 10-hour cautionary tale about the perils of not giving labor activities and unionization enough serious consideration. The authorities on Mars and Earth learned the wrong lessons during the strike, and as a result they have been selecting countermoves from the best-selling Bad Faith Disproportionate Response Handbook. The two worst, and least true, beliefs they have are that the sublevel dwellers are constantly on the verge of violence and that the strikes were driven by avarice. These false assumptions reveal a great deal about the bosses and very little about the employees. They also provide the rationale for using force to put an end to opposition. In Perestroika, resident CIA and KGB agents in Happy Valley intensify their torture of Helios employees, while the uncontrolled, inexperienced Pinkertons continue their quarter searches. These are the violent individuals that Danny, Palmer, Eli, and Irina should be concerned about. Following their brutal defeat of Miles in the last episode, Bishop and Avalov are reaching new heights. Their next strategy involves carbon dioxide poisoning and oxygen deprivation, which is a despicable action that doesn't even have the desired effects. Their threat to file charges against his wife for obtaining Mars rocks and subsequently selling them to jewelers is what ultimately succeeds. Miles, poor Miles, is still too delusional to ask things like, "What laws would convict him, Mandy? Are there laws on Mars itself? If not, isn't that also an issue?" Anyway, after enduring nearly an entire day of physical abuse, poor Miles finally confesses where Alt-Opscom is located on sublevel 4 and instantly regrets it. With Iasis 8 keeping a careful eye on happenings on Ranger and on base, as well as taking independent action to prolong its burn time, Dev's prompt Morse code alert only keeps them from being busted. The most compelling and successful sequences in the entire show take place between Massey up on Ranger and the team's backup location in the North Korean module. It's a welcome repeat of one of FAM's strengths and season finale traditions, a high-stakes set piece. A satisfying, tasteful bookend. Massey's solo EVA to activate Ranger's manual override switch and engage in a zero-gravity struggle with Palmer is the very tense, but ultimately zero fatality, mirror image of Kuznetsov and Parker's tragic EVA in the season premiere. The inevitable and extremely disappointing return of space weaponry, soon after torture, is even less elegant. Danny's genuine, though innocent, lack of knowledge about the interview methods Bishop and Avalov were employing vanishes the instant she witnesses Bishop capture and almost strangle Gerardo to death with a little pipe. She shares his curiosity about the whereabouts of the dispersed saboteurs and was unaware that, by allowing Bishop and Avalov to oversee the investigation into Iasis 8, she had unknowingly approved the use of torture. Bishop correctly surmises that his target must be in the North Korean module, after learning that Commander Cho has spent the entire day in the medical bay, which further deteriorates the situation. Despite her best attempts to stop him, he is soon supplying the Space Pinkertons with the standard attenuated energy projectile systems, also known as high-pressure nitrogen weapons firing non-lethal rounds, that were first mentioned in Crossing the Line. He has requested permission from the Department of Defense to breach it. It's fascinating how state-affiliated armed operatives will go to great lengths to describe their own weapons or violent deeds using incomprehensible euphemisms, while using straightforward language to describe the instruments and deeds of others. Just something to consider. The last act fight pitting the space guns against the fists and makeshift weapons, in which Ilya and companions free Miles and Gerardo to join the fray, and Danny is nearly killed by a real bullet from Lee's old service gun, is a mess. It serves as a plot device to provide a "you say we're violent? Well, we'll demonstrate violence to you" moment, but that argument quickly collapses. How could Ilya have known Miles and Gerardo's locations? How could they all have known to head straight to the module on North Korea? Why must we bear the red herring of Danny's near-death encounter? And does it really need to gravely damage FAM's morale center before everyone stops and brushes aside the cobwebs of mob mentality? The horrific act of violence on Earth that changes Margot and Elida's goals and viewpoint is the announcement of Sergei's passing. When Elida informs Margot that he has been killed, the sound is dropped, which works incredibly well to give them a private time while also serving as a reminder of how much of a world apart these two have always been. Additionally, it lends extra weight to the scene that we have all been waiting for, the confrontation between Margot and Irina, in which both women remove their masks and briefly square off, unknowingly giving Margot and Elida the chance to have another pivotal discussion, a heart-to-heart when they decide to smuggle in some code that will stop Ranger from finishing the Earth shot and keep Goldilocks in Mars orbit. Irina encourages Margot to get a handle of herself. I adore it when a show dramatizes a scene that, while difficult to make appear urgent on television, would likely feel emotional and nerve-wracking in real life. Irina rightly surmises that Elida is the culprit after the eerie hush that follows her cunning act of math and coding daring-do. But Margot throws herself upon the blame, taking full responsibility in an attempt to save Elida. Irina's prediction that Margot would suffer greatly as a result of her decision is not realistic. While it is true that the FBI apprehends Margot as soon as the USSR removes her diplomatic immunity, Irina is left to face the most dire repercussions she can imagine: the implied termination of her influential position inside Korzhenko's government. Had she only stayed in Leningrad? As she is carried away in handcuffs, Margot appears almost relieved, and the voiceover that ends the episode portrays her as a lady who is okayed with what she has done. Her interactions with Elida, Sergei, and Irina, together with her time at NASA and Roscosmos, have helped her develop a more complex view of people. We have cause for hope because of our imperfections, unpredictable nature, and paradoxes, which make us so resilient. She also gets to be the one to publicly state something I've been dying to hear all season: that despite sentiments being uncomfortable and impeding development, they are essential to our comprehension of the present and the future. Luckily, that future involves Miles finding a way to get Lee's wife and a lot other relieved people up to Mars, and Danny living to enjoy being a grandmother. Her little granddaughter is the cutest, and I wish them many hours of intergenerational delight watching Star Trek together. Cheers to Ed's delicious dumplings. They deserve this joyous reunion. It's also conceivable that Dev, wearing a spacesuit, is strolling alongside what appears to be a crater filled with water in 2012, around 9 years later, to look up at the stars in Goldilocks, whose Kuznetsov station is bustling with activity. We can see how large that operation is when the camera pans out to the sounds of M83's Midnight City. Did ISS-8 successfully rescue Mars programs and demonstrate that a mining station could operate in Mars orbit? Is there water in the crater too? The truth will only be revealed in a new season.